Okay, good afternoon. I'm Councillor Diane Donaldson and I'll be chairing this hearing of the Subcommittee A of the Licensing and Public Protection Committee of Birmingham City Council. Before we start, can you all please mute your microphones for the moment in order to improve the sound quality whilst I outline the procedure. Can you also please turn off your cameras with the exception of committee members unless you are the person speaking. This is to reduce bandwidth. Committee members will have their cameras switched on throughout the hearing. I can see that the committee members have their cameras switched on. Could everyone attending today's meeting please put their mobile phones on silent and ensure they are situated in a room or environment which is free from distractions or any unnecessary noise emanating from radios, TVs, etc. Thank you for that. I'm speaking slowly and clearly so everyone can follow. It's vitally important, for what I hope are obvious reasons, that those attending the meeting and making representations are able to hear me and members of my subcommittee and officers. Any distractions brought to my attention could result in the meeting being suspended temporarily or to another date and time under regulations for these types of meetings. I also confirm this is a public meeting and therefore is being live streamed on the City Council's website in order that the general public can view it. So please note this is a public meeting. It will be webcast for live or subsequent broadcast via the Council's meeting YouTube site via the link in the agenda, and that members of the press public may record and take photographs except where there are confidential or exempt items. Members are reminded that they must declare all relevant pecuniary and non-pecuniary interests arising from any business to be discussed at this meeting. If a disclosable pecuniary interest is declared, a member must not speak or take part in that agenda item. Any declarations will be recorded in the minutes of the meeting. Apologies were submitted on behalf of Councillor Davis and Councillor Beauchamp, and Councillor Diane Donaldson and Councillor Sharp were nominated substitute members. The minutes, to confirm and sign the minutes of the meeting held on the 21st of June 2021. Are those agreed?
Agreed, Chair.
Agreed.
Thank you. Can I welcome to this hearing an application in respect of Niam and Jam, 44A, Barker Street, Lozelles, Birmingham, B19 1EP. I'll begin with some introductions. As stated previously, I'm Councillor Diane Donaldson and I'm chairing this meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee. With me are other members of the subcommittee, Councillors Mike Sharp and Councillor Mary Locke.
Afternoon, Chair.
Afternoon. Also present in the meeting are the following officers. Licensing Officer David Kennedy. Sorry, we've got... So can you just...
Councillor, it's Shahid Yasser. I'm substituting for David.
Sorry, yeah, I've got David Kennedy there. Thank you, Shahid.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. And Committee Manager, Meeting Manager, Katie Townsend. Is Katie here?
She is in here, Chair. It's Joanne. She's just showing us on mute.
I'll just confirm that she's here before we...
Just a second. I've had a text from her. I've lost internet. I can't get into the meeting. It's put me on hold. If I just invite her in with an invitation. Katie Townsend, request to join. Yeah, I'm dialing her.
We'll Just wait a moment until we get Katie into the meeting.
Oh, gosh. No, it's dialing, but she's not able to pick up. Chair, I wonder if we should pause the live stream and adjourn for a short while so that we can try and get Katie back in. Sorry.
That sounds like a good idea. Okay, we'll adjourn for 5 minutes and give us a chance to get
Yes,
Katie
please,
back in.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Okay, so good afternoon. We're ready to resume the licensing subcommittee meeting. I got to the point where we introduced licensing officer Shahid Yasser, and now move on to committee manager, meeting manager Katie Townsend.
Good afternoon, Chair.
Good afternoon, Katie. Good to have you back.
Thank you.
And committee lawyer Joanne Swampillai.
Good afternoon, Chair.
Good afternoon. Could I ask all parties to identify themselves, please? Firstly, the applicant. We have Rob Edge.
You're on mute, Rob Edge.
Hi, I'm Laverne South.
Sorry, I didn't realise my mute was on. Check. My name's Rob Edge, Licence Leader Limited, the agent acting on behalf of the applicant.
Good afternoon, Mr. Edge. And we have also Laverne So.
Yes, Laverne's here. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Next, those making representations. We have West Midlands Police.
Yes, good afternoon, Chair. Mark Swallow, West Midlands Police.
Good afternoon, Mark. Councillor Wasim Zafar.
Good afternoon, Chair and Committee. Councillor Wasim Zafar, the Councillor for the Lazar's Ward in Birmingham.
Good afternoon. Richard Green. No, it doesn't appear that we have Richard Green in attendance. Mohammed.
Sorry.
Chair, I am here, sorry.
Sorry.
My mute wasn't working. So it's Richard Green, Community Housing Officer for Green Square Accord Housing, and I'm representing South Road Housing Cooperative.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Mohammed Ali.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Mohammed Ali. I'm a local resident.
Good afternoon. And Abdul Sattar.
We don't appear to have him, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Could I ask if any persons making representations wishes to withdraw representations at this stage of the hearing?
Mark Swallow on behalf of West Midlands Police. No, Chair, thank you.
Thank you.
Richard Green on behalf of South Road Housing Cooperative, no, Chair.
Thank you.
Chair, I also do not wish to withdraw the objection I have raised. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mohammed Ali, I do not wish to withdraw the objection.
Thank you. I will assume that all parties have read and understood the Licensing Committee's procedural rules sent out with the notice of today's hearing. Please note that given the nature of today's proceedings, I may at my discretion amend the procedural rules to reflect the fact that this meeting is taking place online, but wish to assure you that any such amendment will not impact on the party's right to a fair hearing. We'll be using the chat function in Microsoft Teams to communicate. One of the icons on your toolbar is a speech bubble. Click the speech bubble to go into chat. If you do not have access to the chat function for any reason, please use the raise a hand function to indicate you wish to speak. That button is usually the fourth from the right on the toolbar. You can also, of course, indicate verbally that you wish to speak at the appropriate time. Can you all confirm you have access to the chat facility by typing your own name now? Officers will also type their job title, and the meeting will not proceed until you have all done so.
Chair, we don't seem to have Mohammed Ali in the chat, but I notice he has his hand raised.
Yeah, I can't really see the comment button. I'm muted phone, so can I the raise a hand, please?
Yes, certainly.
That's fine then, Chair.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have everyone now?
Yes, Chair.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you, Katie. So please keep the chat column open for the entire duration of the meeting in order that everyone can follow the messages being posted in the chat. If any participant has dialed in on audio telephone rather than Microsoft Teams, please speak now to confirm they can hear and be heard. I don't believe we have anyone dialing in this afternoon.
No, Chair.
Thank you. With the exception of subcommittee members, please keep your camera off unless you are the person speaking. If there are any problems with the bandwidth, which causes difficulties with the sound, I may, in my discretion, ask everyone to turn their cameras off in order that the meeting can proceed with everyone able to hear and be heard. Does anyone wish to make any preliminary points at this stage? If so, please indicate that you wish to raise a hand by typing speak into the chat function or by using the raise a hand function now. Thank you. I'll now briefly outline the procedure which we'll be following at today's hearing. Firstly, the licensing officer, Shahid Yasser, will present the report. Then the applicant and their representative will be asked to present their case. We are asking if this can be kept to approximately 20 minutes. Then those making representations will be invited to make their case. Again, approximately 20 minutes will be allowed for this part of the hearing. Can I ask all parties to speak as slowly and clearly as they possibly can, because the officers are taking notes by hand for the minutes. And the meeting is also being live streamed on the City Council's website. If at any time it is somebody else's turn to speak, please mute your microphone and use the chat function to communicate if necessary. Please note that members of the subcommittee will be able to ask questions at any stage, but will try to do so at the conclusion of each presentation. Cross-examination by the applicant and those making representations will not be permitted unless the members consider it appropriate. Where questions are raised by members of the subcommittee or those present, please signify this by using the chat facility set out on the right-hand side of the screen you are viewing this meeting on. The meeting manager will alert me if I do not notice messages in the chat. I will determine verbally or in writing on the chat facility the order in which the questions are dealt with. Additionally, you may also seek to notify a question or a point verbally in the usual way or at the appropriate point. So at any point in the meeting, if you wish to speak, please type the word speak into the chat function and the meeting manager will ensure that we come to you at the appropriate moment. If at any point you cannot hear or having problems with the internet connection, please use the chat facility to alert the meeting manager. The chair will then ask the person speaking to repeat what they have just said. It is therefore important that you use the chat function as soon as you're unable to hear the person speaking. It may well be that there's a problem caused by people still having their microphones on or cameras on, which creates interference. So we remind everyone to please mute your microphones and turn off your cameras when you're not the person speaking. Could I point out occasionally it may be necessary for the subcommittee to take legal advice. At my discretion, I may ask all parties to wait in this meeting whilst members and the relevant officers withdraw to take legal advice using a separate meeting within Microsoft Teams. We will then return to this meeting and continue. Please note if any time the live stream being broadcast on the City Council's website fails, I will ask you all to mute your microphones and cameras and to stop speaking until the live stream is restored. If at any time this meeting goes into private session, the meeting manager will pause the live stream. Once the private part of the meeting is over, I will ask the meeting manager to confirm that the live stream has resumed before we continue. At the conclusion of the hearing, I will invite all parties to make a brief closing submission. Can I stress that no decision will be taken until all the evidence has been heard? At the decision-making stage, the members and the relevant officers will withdraw from the meeting in order to determine the decision. They will go into a separate Microsoft Teams meeting. In the event that members need to clarify any point, you'll be telephoned by the meeting manager. The members will then make their decision. Notification of the determination of the application will be sent to all parties within 5 working days. I hope that's reasonably straightforward. So with that, can I ask the licence officer, Shahid Yasser, to present the report, please, as slowly and as clearly as you can, please.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you.
Reconvened Restaurant and Cocktail Bar Limited applied on the 13th of July 2021 for the grant of a premises licence for Niam and Jam, 44A Barker Street, Lascelles, Birmingham, B19 1EP. Councillors, the purpose of the report before you today is to consider representations that have been made in respect of an application for a premises licence which seeks to permit the sale of alcohol for consumption on the premises only to operate from 12 p.m. until 11 p.m. Monday to Sunday. The premises wish to remain open to the public from 8 a.m. until 11:30 p.m. Monday to Sunday. A representation has been received from West Midlands Police and as a responsible authority, and it's attached to Appendix 1 of your report. Representations have been received from other persons, which are attached to Appendices 2 to 7. The application, including the supporting documents, are attached to Appendix 8. There's also a site location plan at Appendix 9 of your report. Now, when carrying out its licensing function, a licensing authority must have regard to Birmingham City Council's statement of licensing policy and the guidance issued by the Secretary of State under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003. The licensing authority is also required to take such steps as it considers appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives. The options which are available to you today are to grant the licence in accordance with the application, to reject the application, to grant the licence subject to conditions modified to such an extent as considered appropriate, to exclude from the licence any of the licensable activities to which the application relates, to refuse to specify a person in the licence as a premises supervisor. Thank you, Chair. Chair, you're on mute.
Thank you. Sorry about that. We'll now move on to the applicant's presentation. So would the applicant or their representative like to make their presentation now, please?
Certainly, thank you. Through you, Chair. Acting for the applicant, I've given full regard to the representations made against this application. The licensing objectives as set out in the Licensing Act 2003 and the Council's Statement of Licensing Policy, in addition to the guidance issued under Section 182 of the Act. The premises had operated previously as a public house and was the blight of the neighbourhood. The new owner has taken over the lease and carried out extensive refurbishment internally. They wish to distance themselves from anything that has gone on before and have therefore decided to open as a restaurant cocktail bar. This is not a public house with people standing in the bar as they would do in a vertical drinking establishment. It is, as it says, a restaurant cocktail bar with minimal operating hours for the sale of alcohol. It should be noted that the previous licence, which was revoked by the licensing committee, was licensed until 0100 every day and had live music and late night refreshment. This licence proposes to operate until 11 p.m. and although the application is for 7 days a week, the restaurant may not necessarily open on all 7 days. The premises will be well run and in full compliance with the licensing objectives. They will always liaise with the responsible authorities and be fully accepting of any advice given by them in order to demonstrate that they will uphold the licensing objectives. This was the case with discussions with licensing enforcement during the consultation period where conditions were agreed. Acting on behalf of the applicant, I've contacted those who've objected and attempted to explain our case to them. I've informed them that this is a new application and has no relationship to anything that has gone before. It must be judged on its own merit and how it performs in the future, not on the history of the previous owner. I understand their concerns, but wish to make it clear that this premises will not give them cause for concern. Should there be any issues or concerns, there is always the route that they may contact the applicant to discuss any issues, and if they are not happy with the outcome, they can always apply for the licence to be reviewed. The smoking area will be carefully monitored and the number of people allowed to use it restricted in order to ensure there is not any unnecessary noise or nuisance caused. This will be monitored by the DPS or duty manager. We would suggest that a maximum of 4 persons be allowed in the smoking area at any one time. The premises currently have a very robust operating schedule and minimal hours for its premises licence, bolstered with the additional conditions listed in Appendix D to my documents lodged. The applicant has also implemented a noise management plan to ensure that any concerns are addressed immediately by the premises licence holder. I've noted from West Midlands Police in their statement that, quote, due to the timescale, there would not be any time for meaningful conversation process to take place. Yet Mr. Swallow visited my client on the 26th of July and the conditions were proposed by myself and the client to police on the 29th of July. The subcommittee is now taking place on the 6th/7th of September, a whole month in which mediation could have continued. In fact, it was licensing enforcement that agreed conditions on this application on the 10th of August. We strongly believe that this premises has presented a robust operating schedule and that with a good, strong manager being in place, the restaurant will flourish and become an asset to the local area. It has no history and must be judged on what it does. The DPS who is now being recruited is someone who is very experienced and held a personal licence since 2008. And with your leave, Chair, I would ask if the applicant, Ms. Sow, might just say a few words, please.
Thank you, Mr. Edge. If Ms. Sow could say a few words, that'd be most welcome.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Laverne Sow, and I'm the operator of this premises. I've heard many stories of the problem from when it was a public house, and I can say that I have no intention of doing anything that will harm my reputation. I will always abide by all of the licensing laws. If I am unsure of anything, I will contact Mr. Edge, my licensing agent, for advice. I am very strict in following all the rules and doing things accordingly to the law. I have taken over the lease for this premises and I have invested lots of time, money, and passion in preparing this as a restaurant and cocktail bar that will be an asset to the local community. I will run the restaurant as a professional business, and I will consideration to my neighbors into this great country which is run by the law. I hope you will see me as a strong, reliant operator who you can rely on to run the premises with all according to the law. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. So that's all. Is that all the submissions on behalf of the applicant before we go on to the members' questions?
It is, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Edge. Members, are there any questions from members?
Chair, sorry, Mary, did you want to say something?
You go first, Mike.
Thank you. Could I just ask how many people will be allowed into the restaurant?
So I lost you there, Rick. Did you say how many people would be allowed
into the restaurant at one time? And how will it be policed?
Yes, certainly, Councillor. It's seating for approximately 30 to 35 people, but that's yet to be finalised with the fire risk assessment that will be presented to the West Midlands Fire Service. But having spoken to them about the application, they have no objections to numbers up to 50, but we feel that would be too many for the size of the premises.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Mayor, Councillor Locke, would you like to?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Mr. Edge, you mentioned that you may not open on all 7 days if the licence is granted. Have you any idea how many days you would open?
The truthful answer to that, Chair, is for most new businesses, they recruit people such as a chef who generally work 5 to 6 days a week. And in order to rotate staff, do cleaning, etc., probably 5 out of the 7 days. But as with most new businesses, they have to get a feel for which days customers wish to use the premises, which are the most popular days. And it's a balance between the business strategy, meeting the requirements of customers, but also ensuring that they look after staff. So in short, probably 5 days, but certainly not the 7.
Thank you. And also, you say the outside area, no more than about 4. How will that be monitored? Because if you've got, I don't know how many staff and they're busy and everything, how will that be monitored?
Right. By 2 ways, actually, Councillor. One is that there's CCTV cameras located above the doors outside the premises, and therefore staff serving behind the bar will be able to monitor the CCTV, but either the duty manager or the DPS will keep an eye on it and ensure that no more than those numbers are out there. Purely because we all know that people talking, especially if they've had even a couple of glasses of wine, tend to raise their voice, and noise travels that much more in the evening than it does during the day when there's lots of traffic and other background noise.
That's all true.
Thank you. Mr. Edge, can I do a question from me? Can you just clarify where the smoking area is located?
If you were to look at the premises, the road forks off on either side of the premises. The smoking would be to the exit to the left of the premises as you look at it front on.
So is that
That's the rationale for that is that there are residential premises are further away from that entrance than they would be from the main entrance.
okay? Thank you. Are there any further questions from members? No. Okay, then we'll move on to the presentations. So can those making representations please present their case now, starting with...
Sorry, I did have a question. I did raise my hand.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Can you, I can't see all of the people on the screen. Yeah, would you like to go ahead with your question?
Yeah, what provisions has the applicant made on waste disposal, and where are they going to store it? Because the property itself is a very small property, and you're going to change it to a restaurant, which will mean there's a lot more waste.
Yes, Chair. There will be a professional waste contract, as there is with all restaurants, and the waste will be carefully maintained. So that will include elements of not emptying bottles, containers, or anything into outside bins between the hours of 2200 hours and 0800 hours the following morning.
So my question was, where is it going to be stored in the meantime?
It's stored within the rear of the kitchen element, which is to the left of the side door where the smoking area takes place.
And do they have sufficient capacity to meet the demands of the increased numbers of customers and the waste expected?
They do, and there were no concerns raised by environmental health with regards to that matter.
Okay, you've answered my question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allison. Okay, so if we move on now to the presentations. So can we start with West Midlands Police, please?
Thank you very much, Chair. On the 13th of July 2021, I received an application for the grant of a premises licence for an address 44A Barker Street, Lodells in Birmingham. Postcode is B19 1EP. I carried out intelligence and criminal conviction checks on the details provided. One of the checks involved speaking to the local neighbourhood team for the area. They informed me that if the premises were allowed to open, they believed that it would have a negative impact on crime and disorder in the area, public safety, and would be a major public nuisance. I also ascertained that previously a licensed premises had been at the location, which had had its licence revoked on the 6th of May 2021 by Licensing Subcommittee C. The subcommittee noted that some of the reasons for their decision were the premises traded outside its hours, it was a source of antisocial behaviour, there was noise at late hours, there were parking disputes and other public nuisance, including the holding of street barbecues. I noted that the plan for the application that the premises wished to have as part of its licensable area, an area to and not fenced from the pavement on Barker Street. That has been referred to as the smoking area in this hearing. I also noted that the area was heavily residential, with terraced houses and parking on the roadways. I do not make any link between the applicant and the persons that ran the previous premises. I do not seek to link the issues that were attributed to the previous management of the premises to this applicant. However, some of the issues that were pointed out are generic to the presence of a licensed premises at that location, which, if this premises were located there, would again be an issue. As a result of that, I arranged to meet the applicant at the location to discuss my concerns. From my own observations, I noted that the surrounds of the premises were tightly packed terraced houses. There was no off-road parking and vehicles were parked on the roadway outside the houses. The 3 roads were heavily parked upon, and that was in mid-morning when many people would be at work. I did that on a Monday morning on the 26th of July 2021. I made the applicant aware of my concerns and asked if she had any proposals that could mitigate those concerns. She had no positive suggestions as to what she could do and asked what sort of things I would wish to see. She also told me that she proposed to carry out a breakfast serving in the morning, both for eat-in and take-out. I informed her that as a minimum, I would wish to see that the premises would operate as a restaurant only with table service, that the outside area was not to be used, any music was to be at a background level only, all custom was to be by booking only, and there would be a maximum number of tables and that the applicant should consult with the local community over her plans. I also suggested to the applicant that she should consult with her business colleagues over those suggestions and take advice from her advisors, as I appreciated that those suggestions could impact on her business model. On the 30th of the 7th, 2021, I received an email from the applicant's agent that proposed 3 of the ideas I had put forward to the applicant as suggested conditions that could be added to the licence application. I acknowledge the applicant's wish to compromise. However, by only taking on 3 of the suggestions, that doesn't, in my opinion, provide a solution to the issues that have been pointed out. I also note that the only things that have been proposed are the suggestions that I made, which would make me question the applicant's wish to tackle the issues that have been pointed out to her. In particular, due to the timescale, there would not have been time for any meaningful consultation process to take place. You've heard that even now that the number of tables isn't set. Without having that number, without being able to know how many people are in the premises, that means that you can't ascertain what level of public nuisance there's going to be to the residents who live in the area. My suggestion was obviously to have a maximum number of people, and then with bookings, that means that at any particular time, the applicant could have knowledge of how many people and potentially how many vehicles would be coming to the premises and manage that in relation to the nuisance that caused to the local population. That doesn't give me any confidence that the applicant has any wish to fit into the community that she wishes to join. Should the licence be granted, I believe that nuisance in the form of noise and parking will be to the detriment of the local community. The premises being at the location may also attract crime and disorder as previously, with potential for vehicle crime and for theft. There have also previously been persons dealing drugs that have been attracted to that locality due to there being a market because persons attend those premises, and then they are potential customers for drugs dealers. Even though the applicant has been given chance to show her wishes to promote the licensing objectives and put in place a business plan to negate the previous generic issues that led to the decision made by Licensing Subcommittee C, she has failed to do this, and I therefore wish to object to the grant of the licence. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Swallow. We'll now move on to Councillor Wasim Zafar.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, committee members. Now, most of my submission will relate to the premises rather than the applicant or the people running it, because I'm of the opinion that these premises are unsuitable for any form of application. I have huge sympathy with the previous landlord. She tried incredibly hard to manage these premises, but ultimately because of the location, because of the way the property is set out, and because of the demand for this particular property, it was unmanageable. And we need to look at this application as if it's an absolute new application. And I would be surprised if there was a planning application submitted for these sort of licensed premises in the middle of a residential area as this is would be granted today. Historically, as the colleague from the police said, back in May 2020, the license was revoked at the request by the licensing committee on a campaign that the police led on. The time leading up to that, the casework that I got at all hours on all days, when I say all hours, into the early hours of the morning, from those constituents of mine who live right opposite this particular location on Barker Street or on John Street right next door, or on Hunters Road or on Western Road, was unprecedented. The issues, some of the issues the police has commented upon. I had constituents telling me that they would often have customers of these premises literally in their front garden, and at times some of them were even urinating in people's private gardens. The noise was also a major challenge. Since the licensing committee revoked the license on these premises, the one thing I hear from those constituents of mine is they've got some level of peace back. They've got some level of quality of life back for themselves. And I must stress that this is the most diverse bit of Lozells. And in recent weeks, I've carried out street meetings, door knocks, had a lot of conversations with people of all faith and none. Some would, some of the people I talk to do drink alcohol, and this is by no means an issue related to any particular religion. The residents that live close to where this application is are very, very strongly opposed to it. There's absolutely no off-road parking available for any of the customers. And parking is already a major challenge in Lozells, including this particular area. In fact, I'm currently in conversations with the residents there to see how we can overcome some of the issues that already exist. So any further pressure on the street parking there would be detrimental again. The applicant's agent referred to a smoking area. The moment you step outside these premises, you are on public highway. There is no private off-highway space for people to smoke. So it's interesting that they refer to a smoking area. Actually, that's public highway. The payment there is public highway. The local neighbourhood police, who are incredibly active. In fact, they've had extra support. We now in Lozells have a Lozells impact team, which has been brought in because of some of the challenges that already exist in Lozells. And the Lozells impact team, an extra team of police officers, are actually working on Villa Road just off and very close to this particular site because they see that as a high profile issue. If we had a Lozells impact team, say when the public house was open, there would be no doubt that they would have been having to concentrate on the issues that these premises themselves create. There was something very, very poignant in what the police officer said. When reading the comments made by the local police team, the words major public nuisance was mentioned. I take those when the local police team, who understand the area, understand the challenges that are created in the local neighbourhood, when they say that these premises, if granted license, could potentially lead to major public nuisance, I take that very, very seriously. And the fact you've got nearly 300 people who've signed a petition. And if you have a look at the postcodes, the vast majority of those people are B191. B191 is Lozells. These are local residents who, from all backgrounds, who live in the vicinity of that community. And none of them have told me that there's been any form of proactive engagement from the applicant or the applicant's agent. No one's knocked any doors to reassure the community. I think but because of the issues that the police raised a few months ago, because of there would have been clear intelligence and information with the applicant's agent that there have been historical issues at this venue, I'm sure they were aware that a license was previously revoked. I have not seen any proactive engagement from the applicants with the community that matters most, because they live right, literally you walk out of these premises and you're into people's houses. That's how close it is on all sides. On the side that was referred to in terms of the smoking area from the agent, right opposite that is Western Road, right? And the residents of Western Road have been very, very proactive. There was a strong attendance at a street meeting I had with them, and they are very, very concerned about the potential of a licensed premises reopening. I have sympathy with the applicant, but the reality is, Chair, that these premises are unsuitable. It is the premises themselves, the shape of the premises. I did contact the agent and asked what the capacity would be. At that time, they couldn't confirm the figure. I know that to Councillor Sharp's question, they responded. I think it's going to be very, very difficult to manage, to limit the number of customers coming into that amount. There is a huge demand for such premises. The final thing I will say is there is an issue of cumulative impact in this neighbourhood. We've got some major challenges. Lasalle's a wonderful place, but it does have its challenges, and that's why we've got the Lasalle's impact team that's also coming to support the already established neighbourhood police team. On the other side of Barker Street, without a police objection, at that particular time, not a few months back, the licensing committee rejected an application. I don't want to go into that application because it's not relevant to this, but I think it's really important to understand the context of this neighbourhood, the challenges that we have, and what the police, the community and the council are trying to do. And the one thing I keep hearing in closing, I'll say, is the residents have told me since the licence was revoked, they feel like they've got their lives back. And they, people who get up early to work, they're not awake into the early hours of the morning because of music being played, because of street barbecues. There is no off-road parking. There is no off-road place to smoke. And the important question asked by the local resident about where waste will be stored, there is no way that that they can store their waste before it's collected other than the highway itself. So I would respectfully ask the committee to reject this application because the venue itself is unsuitable for a licence. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Zafat. We'll now move on to Richard Green.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so I'm in attendance at this licensing subcommittee hearing today as a community housing officer working for Green Square Accord Housing, and I am representing South Road Housing Cooperative, who are a small registered social housing landlord based in the Lasalle's and Handsworth area of Birmingham. Predominantly, the majority of their properties are located on Barker Street and Hunters Road, and they are directly impacted by the opening of this premises. South Road Housing Cooperative in itself, on behalf of its members, there is 50 tenants, and they are opposing this licensing application. The grounds that they are opposing the licensing application are as follows. 1, the premises is situated in a built-up residential area. 2, there was no named DPS listed on the application despite requesting a licence for the sale of alcohol by retail on the premises. 3, parking. As you are aware, there is limited on-street parking in and around the vicinity of the premises. In the past, residents have complained to West Midlands Police and Birmingham City Council stating that patrons visiting the premises have parked dangerously and illegally on the corner of Barker Street and Hunters Road. Previously, the observatory did not operate as a restaurant. However, the opening of a restaurant and a cocktail bar will cause further parking issues for local residents. 4, between July 2008 and May 2020, there was a total of 23 complaints of antisocial behaviour reported to Birmingham City Council Licensing Department and West Midlands Police. These complaints related to noise nuisance, barbecues on the pavement outside the premises, antisocial behaviour outside the premises, including fighting in the street, violence and physical assault, as well as licensable activities outside of the permitted operating hours. As a result of this, the premises has had a negative impact on the quality of life for local residents. Regrettably, there is nothing within the application to suggest that reopening of the premises will have any benefit to the local community. 5, the blue notice which was recently displayed inviting representations from interested parties was moved from the main front door to a side window. South Road Housing believed that this had been done deliberately to avoid representations being made to local residents and wider community. 6, due to the past issues, we firmly believe that the following licensing objectives will be breached regardless of the licence holder and DPS. A, the prevention of crime and disorder. B, public safety. C, prevention of public nuisance. Since submitting these objections, Mr. Edge, acting on behalf of the applicant, has attempted to mediate with South Road Housing Cooperative and other persons who have objected to this licensing application. In an email from Mr. Edge dated the 29th of July 2021, it stated that the new owner has no direct links to any previous running of the premises and cannot therefore be held responsible for anything that previously took place at the premises when it was a public house. However, following a recent search of Niam and Jam on Company's House, Miss Sophia Lawrence, the former DPS of the observatory, is listed as both an officer and a person with significant control. Furthermore, the decision notice from Birmingham City Council Licensing Committee C hearing, which was held on the 6th of May 2020, states that the designated premises supervisor, Miss Sophia Lawrence, had displayed an inadequate management style, and that under the management of Miss Sophia Lawrence, the premises was not capable of proper operation. Chair, from the licensing report provided, you will be aware that the premises are located in a built-up residential area. For many years, residents' lives have been blighted by antisocial behaviour linked to the former observatory public house, and it is my opinion, and the opinion of South Road Housing Cooperative, that the reopening of these premises as a restaurant and cocktail bar will cause a significant nuisance to local residents and the wider community. Therefore, I put it to this licensing subcommittee that this licensing application be rejected. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chris. I'll now move on to Mr. Mohammed Ali. Mr. Ali.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, this is Mohammed. Can I have my say?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm a local resident here. Yeah, I've lived on very nearby many years, and I've seen the area at its worst. I'm just a bit shocked just to find out about the significant control, because this is just, I'm just shocked. Sorry, just yeah. Yeah, it just goes to show there's, things are not being done properly, and I don't know if Rob Edge has actually even been bothered to even check a basics, things like that, let alone engage with the local community.
Mr. Ali, can I just, one moment, could you put your camera on whilst you're speaking, please?
I'd rather not, because it's going to go on social media and be on the press as well, and I don't want any retaliation. This is a sort of pub where it's not a pint drinking pub. There's been heavy crime involved in it before. People have been, stabbed nearby, and I do not want any retaliation for my objection. So for that reason and for my protection, I'm happy just to do it like this, if you don't mind.
I'll just check with Joanne, is that
yes, all right. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Ali, please.
Yeah, so the license, she's applied for a cocktail bar. When you go to a cocktail bar, it's not, you're not drinking softly, you're celebrating, or you're drinking a few cocktails, which means you're encouraging people to get drunk. And also, as a business itself, how are you meant to sustain it if you're not selling a lot of cocktails? So, it just doesn't make the business plan itself, it just doesn't seem it's going to work unless something else happens that we don't know. So I'm not trying to suggest illegal activity is going to happen, but I don't know how she's going to sustain the business. The applicant stated she's got, she's doing it for the good of the community, but I can fully handily say there's not one resident that lives within 200 meters that will attend this premises, probably even 300 meters. And I'll be welcome, anyone, if she can show anyone that will be using it. It's not an asset at all. It's a burden, and it always has been a burden. There are people who loiter outside, smoking drugs, and even the sales of it before. The crowd that she's encouraging to come and use it is not going to be a new crowd. I mean, everyone here that's on this panel who lives in Birmingham, you're not going to attend this pub in your life. You're not even going to want to walk past it with your family when there are people loitering outside, who you would make you feel unsafe. So since the previous owner has closed, it's made it a lot safer for people. People can have their blinds open at the evenings and not having to, worry that people are looking into the houses and, fearing that it could get burgled, or, it's just, it maintains that sense of, home ownership, privacy and safety, and encourage, a harmonious area. So, and we've looked at all the past. We know that the applicant's not connected. However, the applicant has not shown enough evidence that she could maintain, this sort of new venture in terms of the crowd, because they'll come back, these people, and this is this type of place because the police are overstretched and they can't always attend, the calls for basic things like parking in the evening or urinating. These are not seen as priority and they often get overlooked. So these things will come back into place, and definitely she wouldn't be able to control that. And the fact that she's also connected to that fact, it seems like there's some dodgy activity going ahead. Yep. So as a resident, fully object to it. We don't want it. As it stands, it's encouraging a nice area enough for families to walk around, children to play, and my objection stands. Please reject this application for the alcohol. You're more than welcome to have a restaurant. I'll eat there if the food's all right, but definitely no alcohol because it's going to turn into a grimy pub.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ali. I'd just like to bring Councillor Wasim Zafar back in if he's got a point to raise.
Yeah, Chair, on the 25th of August, I wrote to Mr. Edge, and one of the questions I asked was, can you please confirm that there is no one involved in any way with Naam and Jam, that has had any involvement with these premises in the past? There is a rumour circulating in the community that the individual who had their licence revoked previously is involved with this venture, and I do not have any evidence to confirm or deny this. That's why I'm using this opportunity to ask you. Mr. Edge responded on the same day, a few hours later, 3 hours later, and one of the points he made was, to the best of my knowledge, the applicant was not involved in any activity with the previous premises, and this is a new venture for her at Naam and Jam. Can I just ask, there was a very important point made by Mr. Green in relation to some evidence that their organisation uncovered linking this applicant with the previous premises. Is that what I heard? Is that correct?
I think Mr. Edge can address that in his summing up. We can't have cross-examination of people posing questions as the hearing goes on. Mr. Edge will deal with that in his summing up. I'll remind him about that if he doesn't. Okay.
Chair, I appreciate. The only thing did I hear correctly what Mr. Green said? That I wasn't cross-examining Mr. Edge. I was just asking if Mr. Green did say there was a link. That's all I was asking.
Chair, if I could just clarify that, yes. So the search that I did on Company's House revealed the former DPS, Miss Sophia Lawrence, as being a person of significant control and listed as an officer, in fact, as well. So they were listed as an officer and a person with significant control, and that is the former DPS of the observatory.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll now move on to the final presentation. Abdul Sattar, if he's in attendance.
He's not in attendance, Chair.
Okay, all right,
so
thank you.
He's summing up.
All right, so before we go to, so that's all of the submissions on behalf of those making representations. We'll now go on to questions from members.
Nothing from me.
Councillor Locke?
Nothing from.
Okay, thank you.
Nothing from me, Chair.
Thank you.
Or me, Chair.
Thank you. Right, so we'll move on to closing submissions in reverse order. So those who are making representations, would you wish to make a closing submission? Starting with Mohammed Ali.
Yeah, there's been objections by the police. They're the people that would have to manage, and if they can't police it, this license should be granted at all. And yep, they are the authority.
Thank you, Mr. Ali. Mr. Green.
So yes, sorry, from the information and evidence provided, South Road Housing Cooperative, responsible authorities and other persons, we are of the opinion that the only appropriate and safest course of action is for this licensing application to be rejected. There is overwhelming support from the local community for this licensing application to be rejected. including a petition signed by 273 local residents. I therefore urge this licensing subcommittee to reject this.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Councillor Wasim Zafar.
Thank you, Chair. West Midlands Police object to this application. The local council objects to this application. Nearly 300 local residents, many of whom live right on the doorstep of these premises, object to this application. A housing association objects to this application. The residents in that vicinity have seen over the past 12 months or so, when there's been no alcohol activity at this particular location, get their lives back. I asked the committee to reject it, and in light of what has been uncovered by the evidence submitted by the Housing Association and the links between the applicant and the previous activity at the observatory, which have already just come to light, I am strongly against this application, and I would respectfully ask that this is rejected. Thank you.
Finally, West Midlands Police.
Thank you, Councillor. You've heard how the closure of the previous premises has had a majorly beneficial effect upon the lives of people who live in the area. The fear is that if another premises opens up, those generic problems that were uncovered previously will return and again haunt that area. If the application was granted, West Midlands Police believe it will impact upon crime and disorder, public safety, and cause a major public nuisance. I believe the applicant has failed to consult with the public and failed to assimilate suggestions made to mitigate these risks posed, and therefore I would question their ability to promote the licensing objectives, and I would therefore ask that the application be rejected. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Swallow. Finally, does the applicant or their representative wish to make a closing submission now, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. As was said earlier, the applicant intends to run the premises in a professional manner, showing due diligence and listening to the neighbours and responsible authorities alike. Of the 8 responsible authorities who could have objected, only 1 saw fit to do so. And in particular, Environmental Health, who are your experts on public nuisance, have not objected under the licensing objective of public nuisance. Additionally, conditions were agreed with the licensing enforcement team, leading us to believe that this will not add to any cumulative impact on the nighttime economy within this area. As was said, the applicant has invested time, money and passion to make this successful. She would not risk any of this by undermining the licensing objectives. This has been demonstrated by her willingness to employ the services of a consultant to deliver comprehensive packages to support upholding the licensing objectives. We trust you see this as a strong operating schedule, taking everything into consideration, with robust policies in place. The applicant intends to show it will be a model premises and run in accordance with the Licensing Act of 2003. Cooperating with responsible authorities moving forward and being accepting of expert advice by those bodies. The following documents are already in place: noise management plan, staff training and an operations guide, refusals log, incident log, DPS authorization and Challenge 25 policy. I fully understand the concerns of those who've objected. However, when reading of their concerns, there have not been any submissions of evidence that are linked to this application, and currently none presented that show the licensing objectives would not be fully upheld. The final point is that in section 9.43 of the 182 guidance, it informs us that the authority's determination should be evidence-based, justified as being appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives and proportionate to what it is intended to achieve. I've not heard any robust evidence today that this premises will not uphold the licensing objectives. In answer to some of the points that were raised by the police and other persons, much was made of the revocation of the previous licence and of parking problems. Neither of those are within the control of the premises licence holder for this application. With regards to the meeting with police on site at the location, there were 4 conditions offered after that meeting. They were that the restaurant must operate as a restaurant with patrons being seated at tables. Glasses and vessels are not to be taken outside by those using the smoking area. All music played within the premises shall be at background level only and shall not cause a noise or disturbance at adjacent residential properties. And it should be noted that those fall before the bewitching hour of 11 p.m, which make them deregulated entertainment. The final one was that all doors and windows to remain closed when music is playing, except for egress and access. In answer to the question of the blue notice, I went to post the blue notices at the premises, posted them at the main entrance, and because my client wasn't there at the time, I stuck them on the outside of the window. The applicant, on my advice, then moved those notices to the inside of the side road and the inside of the main entrance. These were checked by licensing enforcement on 2 occasions during the consultation period, and they were happy with those. As I said, public nuisance has not been, environmental health have not raised any objections under the grounds of public nuisance. Predominantly in conversation, it was because this is a restaurant cocktail bar and no longer a vertical drinking establishment as a public house. With regards to Mr. Green's point of the link, I am still convinced that Ms. Sow has no links whatsoever to the previous running or control of the premises that was previously revoked. If she wishes to say anything, then I'm quite happy for you to listen to that, Chair. But that concludes my final summary.
Okay, so you can't comment on the point made about the company's house record.
That's what I was saying. With regards to that link, whether Miss Sow wishes to make a comment on that, but I have no knowledge or no evidence to the contrary of the fact that this is her business in her name. She is the applicant. She is the key director for this business and has no link to any previous business or any license that was previously revoked.
Thank you, Mr. Reg. I'll ask.
Thank you, Chair.
Miss So now she can come in and clarify the points raised.
Thank you, Councillor. I've been listening to all the objections and everything, and I totally understand. And I've got no links to the previous owner of this premises. I came in, I've worked at the hotel for 20 years and I've been furloughed, and this opportunity came about, and I cooked. I'm from a Caribbean background and I cook and I enjoy cooking, and that's what I wanted to do. I've got no links with the previous owner. I haven't had a chance yet. I'm not even started trading. And I've been told, oh, it's going to be the same thing of what it used to be before and everything. You have to give me a chance And then if I messed up, then fair enough, I can hold my hand up, but I've not even started trading and I've been painted with a brush from the previous owner. So that's all I've got to say. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Miss So.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, so I'll now ask all parties to leave the Microsoft Teams meeting, and the members and the committee lawyer and the committee manager will go into the private session while the subcommittee makes its decision. You'll be notified of the subcommittee of a decision of the subcommittee within 5 working days. Thank you. Thank you everyone for attending this afternoon.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.